everybody. Time for the weekly news recap, the 29th to the 4th of August 2024. So this week, THQ Nordic had a showcase. We will have a look at here. So a couple of games they showed off. It was pretty short. It's about less than an hour, really. Kind of showing off a couple of games they have in development, and then some games that are way down the line in development. So there's nothing really coming out soon, other than the Disney Epic Mickey rebrush, the remaster of that game. I think is probably the next thing from them. Anyway, what we're looking at here is the Gothic remake. So if you're not familiar, Gothic was a kind of AA approach to Morrowind, Oblivion, Elder Scrolls kind of stuff. So kind of a living simulated world where you would just kind of live in it, medieval fantasy kind of thing. The gist of the original Gothic is that you were in a penal colony that has been taken over by the prisoners. There's this dome that kind of keeps everybody locked in. And there are various factions vying to either try to break out of the dome or just keep the penal colony running because the kingdom will still supply them. And there's some old god shit going on in the background as well. So it still has kind of the faction stuff that you might have been familiar with in Skyrim, Oblivion, that kind of thing. It is very much that kind of game. We're not seeing a ton of gameplay in this trailer. It's mostly just setting up the world, telling you about the different factions, different kind of things you can do as part of the game and that kind of thing. This is a full remake of Gothic, so it's not a remaster or release for a deluxe edition or something like that. It's a full-on remake. It seems like it's coming together pretty well. I don't expect it to like blow things out of the water or anything, because it is going to be THQ effort, so it is going to be the AA territory. But yeah, I'm kind of interested to see how this plays out, because obviously Skyrim came out a very long time ago, 2011. And yes, it came out multiple times again after that, but also that was the original time it came out. Avowed, as we're going to discover later, has been delayed. We don't really know when this is coming out, but Elder Scrolls 6 is a very long time away. So this, in the meantime, this is kind of all we got. That combat does not look good. Anyway, moving on. There's no release date or anything yet. Titan Quest 2 also shown off briefly. So the Titan Quest games are again another AA attempt at a different genre. This would have been Diablo. The original Titan Quest is pretty decent for what it was. It was set in mythical classics era, Greece, Rome sort of thing they were going for. But it was very much a Diablo looting, slashing, action RPG kind of thing. And now that Diablo has gone off on this weird live service tangent, I think there's room for just a strong campaign focused looter thing. I mean, it's exactly what it looks like. It's Diablo, but not. It's Titan Quest. Again, no release date. It's just showing off the barbarian equivalent there, and there's the wizard or sorcerer equivalent. They have different names for obvious reasons, but you have a color coding of your loot. You pick things up here, and it has the different colors on it that, for uniques and legendaries and rares and what have you. Different monsters and what have you. Wishlist now. Again, no release date. But it will be coming to pretty much everything except the Switch. Maybe the Switch 2, whenever that's announced. Okay, some two other games that were teased that are probably a while off before they'll be released. So Tarsier Studios, THQ Nordic, are going to fully reveal something at Gamescom, which is later this month. It's the end of August 20th. The only thing we have from it so far is this disgusting pig. So this pig has its belly sewn up, but it didn't do a pretty good job of it because its intestines are still spilling out. And its intestines don't look the right color either. Also, the pig talks to you and says they're coming, and then waddles off. So what exactly this game is, we don't know. It's an entirely new vision, unlike anything you've seen before. So not Little Nightmares 3, which is what Tarsier Studios are also working on. So this is from the creators behind Little Nightmares 1 and 2. I'm actually not sure if they're the developer for 3. I think the developer is actually a different company. Anyway, they're working on something, and it's probably horror focused from the looks of things. And we'll find out later at Gamescom. And then another thing they're teasing, this is a little bit more obvious what this is. I'm sure if you're familiar with the series, you know exactly what this is. But anyway, new Darksiders game in development. Be prepared to ride again. This is all we know. The teaser trailer is just a fairly labored look at the environment. And then at the end, it's these guys spring up and yell horsemen. There was never a Darksiders 4. And if you've read any kind of mythical thing about the horsemen, you know there's 4 of them. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So there was a 4th Darksiders game, but it wasn't called Darksiders 4. It was called Darksiders Genesis, I think. And it was like a prequel thing. Each of the Darksiders games have focused on one of the horsemen. So the first one focused on war, the second one focused on death, third one focused on strife. No, not strife. Fury, I think was her name. They just didn't want to do pestilence and famine for some reason. They wanted to give them different names. But anyway, so Strife is the only one that hasn't had a Darksiders focused on them, and they have appeared in the games. They just haven't been. They just haven't had a solo game. Darksiders Genesis, I think, was the first time they were playable. It'll be interesting because they don't play the same as the other horsemen. So War, Death, Fury are all melee focused, whereas Strife is guns, primarily. So I'm not necessarily sure they can follow the same formula, unless they just decide to redo their character and go, yeah, no, he's melee too now. Okay, alright, fine. I'd be fine with it, to be honest. Anyway, no idea when that's... I imagine has only like just entered development, maybe a year in or something like that. Anyway, moving on. Updates outside of that. Promise Mascot Agency. So this is the next game from Kaizo Gameworks, I think is their name. So we played their first game, Paradise Killer, on the channel. It was a Fully Fables thing. It was a very good detective visual novel thing. I really liked it. It was very, very good. Had this really interesting mythos built up around it, and I kind of hope they'll do a sequel to it at some point because the universe was just really interesting. Anyway, this is their next game. It's a kind of mascot management / open world kind of thing. You are this kind of Yakuza enforcer who has been disgraced and has been sent out to this place in the middle of nowhere to run a mascot agency that has not been doing well recently. So in the world of this game, mascots are actual creatures, like, I don't know, cryptids type things, I suppose. But they're real things. They're not people inside suits. They're like actual beings. And the ones that you are dealing with are the misfits, the ones that didn't really get a proper calling. They're a bit weird. They're a bit strange. They're maybe a little bit off-putting to some people and so on. And it's your job to find them work and make them productive members of society and what have you, while also discovering some conspiracy for who stole all your money and killed your friend, and now your family, the Yakuza family, is really, really angry with you, basically. It has the kind of like comedic stuff from Paradise Killer, and also the straight up fucking weird shit that game had as well. We skip ahead a little bit. So a lot of the game is you driving around with Pinky in the back. Pinky is a baby finger that's been cut off, which is a Yakuza thing. So I imagine there's some connection there. Anyway, Pinky was the original manager of the mascot agency, but you've now come in to take over. So I don't know if they're happy about it or not. It's not quite clear. They clearly have anger management issues, but anyway, as you can see, Pinky obviously has different nails, which are cosmetic stuff. Anyway, you have some weird mascots. You can see here, this guy has his body ripped open. That's what he just looks like normally. Who knows what's going on? Anyway, they have a lot of fun stuff. There's a management system where you send the mascots off to do particular jobs, and they can get into the trouble while they're at the job, and you need to kind of help them out. And you help them out by finding people in town who want to help the mascots and having them get them out of whatever the problem is. The first one, I'm just going to skip ahead here, is that the tofu block gets stuck in a really small door. it's this kind of stuff. And there's one later on where there's a cute dog chases them around. Versus a normal sized door. So you enlist people to kind of help them out. And by helping them out, they just mean just kicking them through the door, basically. It's this kind of game. Anyway, Pinky helps out, and then I think Shiori is your assistant. They managed to overcome the normal sized door. The tofu block shunts itself out of the door. Yay! Everybody's happy. Anyway, it's Promise Mascot Agency. It's wishlistable on Steam. There's no release date for it, but I'm very much looking forward to it. Within the Cosmos, so I hadn't heard of this game before. This is, what do you call it? It's kind of like an immersive sim, so Deus Ex kind of thing, but it has a lot of the Outer Worlds to it, which was Obsidian's. I don't want to say Fallout clone, but that's kind of what it ended up being. It was okay. It started off really strong and then just didn't go anywhere afterwards. This is by a much smaller team. I think it's only like 4 or 5 people. But they're, being extremely ambitious, trying to make an immersive sim. That's a type of game that takes a lot of work. There's a lot of systems that have to interplay with each other, and everything has to work out nicely. There's obviously a lot of flexibility on how the player can approach things, and being able to cater for all of that and having everything feel intentional can be really difficult to do. Immersive, not all immersive sims manage to pull it off. It looks a bit rough, but that again, there's a very small team working on it, and I think this is still fairly early in development, so there's no release date or anything yet. But it is wishlistable. If you feel like it, you can check it out. I think it's wishlistable. I hope I'm not thinking of a different game. Yeah, it is. Okay. Within the Cosmos. Moving on. Numata has a release date. It's launching August 20th, same day as Gamescom. Same day as Black Myth Wukong as well, is also launching August 20th. So this, again, is an indie attempt at kind of the newer Resident Evils. Not the remakes, the ones before that. 7 and 8. Resi 7, Resident Evil Village. So first person, high fidelity, survival horror, but more of an action focus to it. So you do have guns, basically, is this change. Again, combat's a bit rough. It does look really nice. The enemies don't have a ton of variety to them. Except for that guy, he looks interesting. But there's some weird shit going on. There's a little bit of Outlast to it as well. It's kind of documentary vibe. Yeah, my only real issue with it is that the enemies don't look particularly interesting. Not that the enemies in Resident Evil 7 look particularly interesting. They're just black blobs. At least they were different. They were not just a guy. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see. It's out a couple of weeks. Okay, now for the bad news. Obsidian's Avowed has reportedly been delayed. So there was a rumor that it was going to be delayed, and it is now officially delayed. Microsoft has now officially moved the fantasy action RPG's release out of 2024, so it's going to be February now of 2025 at some point, Xbox and PC. The reason given was that there's too many games coming out at the end of the year. So give players' backlogs some breathing room, which was Avowed or Obsidian's reason for it. And Phil Spencer came out of hiding to actually say something. We're proud of what the Obsidian team have accomplished with Avowed and want to make sure they have the best launch possible before shutting the company. And a year later, probably. Who knows? That's what they did with Tango Gameworks. Had a really successful game, and then they shut them down. Hopefully Obsidian will avoid that, because they made some really good games that I really liked. Anyway, moving on. Also delayed, Blade Chimera has been delayed out to an unannounced date, so we don't know when that's coming out. Blade Chimera we played as part of the last Steam Next Fest. It's an interesting Metroidvania that has some kind of time rewindy things. It has a little bit of... what is the Zelda where he has the sword that talks to him? Is that Phantom Hourglass? That one. Anyway, whatever that one is, it has a little bit of that to it because you also have a sword companion that talks to you. The reason given was extra polishing, quality improvement. It's pretty basic, pretty standard excuse reason. The unannounced date is a little worrying though. So who knows when that's coming out. Anyway, the free Epic game this week is Lumberjack. So Lumberjack, despite having an amazing pun, it's a pretty basic game. It's got like a top-down action type thing. You're playing a bear who's also a lumberjack, and you are kind of ridding the forest of environmental problems, essentially. Grab your axe and save the environment by chopping and recycling every man-made thing in your path and solving puzzles with your charming animal friends. Now, one would question, if you're a lumberjack, aren't you also part of the problem? Anyway, as you can see, it doesn't take itself particularly seriously if the name didn't give it away. From what I had seen of it, I am actually kind of interested in playing it. So I'm going to see if I can actually finally get the Epic Game Store working on my Steam Deck. I haven't got around to trying it yet. Anyway, that's Lumberjack. It's the start of a new month, so that means monthly game refreshes for Game Pass and PlayStation. So we don't have the Game Pass news yet, but PlayStation Plus Essential, which is the bottom tier, the basic tier, gets you online access and a couple of rotating curated games. So this month, Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga, Five Nights at Freddy's, Security Breach, and Ender Lilies: Quietus of the Nights. So, what are those games? I think the Lego game is pretty straightforward. Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga is all 9 films in Lego versions. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a Lego game, but has all of the films. The original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, the sequel trilogy. It's a fun time. It's a Lego game. Doesn't take itself very seriously. It's good jokes every now and then, some not so good jokes every now and then, and then it's a big collectathon. You know, there's a lot of things to pick up and find, and secrets and that kind of thing. It's a good time. Very big. It's a very big game. I platinumed it recently, and that took a really long time. Anyway, Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is the not Five Nights at Freddy's game. It's the first person roaming around stalker type thing. So rather than the usual typical Five Nights at Freddy's game where you're just sitting in the booth and having to keep an eye on cameras and close doors and stuff like that, this is more of a kind of stealthy horror type thing. It's okay. Ender Lilies: Quietus of the Nights is a 2D Souls. It's not a great way to describe it, but that's kind of what it is. So it's got a bit of a Metroidvania vibe to it, but it's very much more of a really hard 2D combat game. It's a good game though. Very hard. I will emphasize that part. Anyway, those are some of the games you can play soon. What if you wanted to play something right now? You can play Thank Goodness You're Here. Thank Goodness You're Here is a British comedy hilarity thing. You're this tiny little gremlin guy who's going around helping people, and just comedy ensues. You're not getting a lot of it because a lot of the comedy is just skits and dialogue and stuff like that. Very funny. Very funny game. How much replayability it has, probably not much, but in the small amount that you will play, very funny game. Definitely recommend. Thalassa, something about the Abyss, Edge of the Abyss. So this is Foley Fable's fodder. Absolutely. You're playing somebody whose father, I think, was on a ship that sank, and you have been called in to kind of figure out what happened to the ship, what were the events of it, what led up to its sinking, and so on and so forth. So it's got a little bit of Return of the Obra Dinn, in that you're kind of just presented with this mystery thing of the ship. People died. There was some kind of accident that led to the thing sinking. You got to figure out what happened to the people in there, and there's maybe some people there who don't want you to find out, kind of thing. Looks like it's going to be a pretty linear, narrative focused thing. Return of the Obra Dinn. Again, I mean, Return of the Obra Dinn was a little linear, I suppose, but you could kind of jump around different sections and figure out what was going on. How much of that you'll be able to do here, debatable, but you know me, I like these kind of things. It's like half of Foley Fables is this exact kind of game. Anyway, moving on. Hello Crew World VR title, where you are... I think the gist of it is it's basically Saw, the films, um, but you are kind of in a live stream version of it or something like that, and you're just trying to escape. So it's a bit of an escape room survival horror thing, but in VR. And you have the chat here kind of talking about what's going on in the environment, and maybe telling you hints possibly on what to do. I wonder if they're going to try that out. I don't know, that kind of thing. Who knows how well it'll play, but at least it's an interesting idea for VR that isn't just a wave shooter or effectively an arcade game. You know, something different. Because a lot of the issues with VR games is that a lot of them are the same. It's kind of the problem. There's no real attempt to try to do something different. And the ones that do try to do something different, unfortunately, don't do well. That might suggest something. Anyway, we'll see how it works out. It's Hello Cruel World. And then Minds Beneath Us is a visual novel detective type thing. Again, from a very small team. It's kind of the premise of this is we're in a near future environment where a lot of jobs have been taken over by AI, and people, you know, it hasn't had the trickle down that it might have. Everyone keeps telling us that it'll have. You know, you won't have to work anymore. Everyone will be doing great. No, it doesn't work out that way. So what does change is the AI need more computing power, and the best computing power they can get is the human brain. So people who aren't able to afford this, you know, new society and what have you, kind of feel like they have to donate their body to, you know, they give their time over to processing for AI. And that's kind of how they make their money and afford to live here. Anyway, conspiracy things. I don't want to give away too much of the story, so that's what we're talking about. It's kind of espionage, kind of sci-fi kind of thing. It looks interesting. Give that a shot soon enough. Anyway, unfortunately though, it is now time to talk about the worst part of video games, the video game industry. So the big news this week, Bungie has had another round of layoffs. They had a bunch of layoffs the end of last year, which are seen as not doing pretty great. This was coming off the Lightfall expansion that didn't sell as well as they wanted it to, or something like that. And they were forced to lay off people. And once again, they've been forced to lay off people, despite this expansion being received pretty well. So Bungie is set to lay off 220 staff, or about 17% of its workforce, due to rising costs of development and industry shifts, as well as enduring economic conditions. According to Bungie chairman and CEO Pete Parsons, keep an eye on that name, he's going to come up again. Layoffs are going to be affecting every level except C-suite, of course. Not going to affect those guys. Including executive and senior roles, but not really, mostly just the development team. Anyway, laid off staff will be given severance, yada yada yada. Who knows how good that will be, we'll find out later. Bungie is also deepening integration with Sony Interactive Entertainment, so reminder, Sony own Bungie. They bought them end of 2022, I think. So they'll be integrating 155 roles, or 12% of its workforce. This does not include the 220 staff being let go. This is addition to it. So now Bungie have now lost 29% of their workforce into Sony Interactive Entertainment over the next few quarters. So basically, there was a pilot project that Bungie were working on for a new game, new series, and so on. In-house, that is now being moved out of Bungie, and Sony are going to set up a new studio to work on that independently. So one of Bungie's incubation products will be spun out and continue development at a newly formed studio within PlayStation Studios, involving the 155 people that they're poaching from Bungie, and probably the people they poached from Deviation Games and then shut down. I'd imagine they're working on the same game, and the game does not look all that interesting, to be honest. It looks like a Fall Guys clone. It's a bit disappointing. Anyway, so yeah, that's not great news, especially since, so it's a fairly lengthy blog post, but a lot of it is just corporate bullshit. 220 staff gone, 155 being redistributed, and then I think there's also a number of other roles that aren't being taken into this new studio, but they are being divvied up around PlayStation Studios. But they weren't able to do anything with this 220 staff for some reason. I don't know why. Who knows? Anyway, speaking of the CEO, yeah, there's layoffs because it's just too expensive to make games anymore. But hey, I had a spare 2.3 million to spend on classic cars. Bungie CEO seemingly spent over $2.3 million on classic cars after the Sony acquisition. Some are calling on Pete Parsons to resign after another round of devastating layoffs. Some are calling. I think everybody should be calling on it. Anyway, so Sony purchased Bungie for $3.6 billion in 2022. Following the sale, Pete Parsons purchased over 20 classic cars in online auctions. He continued buying them even after the mass layoffs at the studio last year. So clearly he's not hurting for money. He can just throw it around on cars he's never going to drive. And he can't drive 20 cars at once. He only has one ass. Like, anyway. Understaffed to be laid off last October. A tweet from the CEO thanking those cut for their contribution to the company was accused of being tone deaf at the time. I was one of the people who accused him of being tone deaf at the time. It was a terrible thing to say. Pete Parsons wrote in the blog post that we were overly ambitious, our financial safety margins were subsequently exceeded, and we began running into the red, but I still had enough money for these cars. After this new trajectory became clear, we knew we had to change our course and speed, and we did everything we could to avoid today's outcome, except take a pay cut. Even with exhaustive efforts undertaken across our leadership and product teams to resolve our financial challenges, these steps were simply not enough. I just couldn't part with any of my cars, I guess. And one motorbike. They're not even, well, okay, the one at the top left is nice, but the rest are not. Okay, this Porsche is pretty nice too, but still, if your company is doing so poorly that you've had to lay off people twice in the span of 6 months, maybe stop buying this shit. Maybe take a pay cut. Maybe redistribute that money. They're not a publicly trading company anymore, and they had a lot of independence to do this. Sony was not preventing you from taking a pay cut. Anyway. So this came about because a Valorant Player Association project manager, so somebody on a competing company, I suppose, but anyway, kind of brought out that Bungie lays off 17% of its workforce. Unrelated, here's a list of cars the CEO has purchased on BAT, which is Bring a Trailer, which is a auction site. Why have you done this, Kotaku? Why do you keep doing this to me? Anyway, back to it. Anyway, his list over a dozen cars, lots of things that he's won auctions on, but they're auctions, which means he has tried before on other things and not won the auction, so he clearly has the money. The month after Bungie's first round of mass layoffs, he was buying a car for $201,000, and another one for $205,000. Anyway, the total is about $2.4 million. Shows the CEO and others examining vintage cars and commercials. So there is pictures of these cars with the CEO in them, looking at them. It's him, right? It's not a question of us finding the wrong person here. It is definitely him. Now, 2.4 million, not a lot of money in the scheme of things, but it does show that he was being paid too much money because he was able to just, I'm just gonna throw my money at this. None of that being put back into the studio to maybe avoid these layoffs. No, maybe getting your people paid a little bit better. No, maybe redistributing the wealth a tiny bit. How about those exhaustive? What was his phrasing? Exhaustive efforts undertaken to resolve our financial challenges. I don't think somebody doesn't understand what the word exhaustive means. Anyway. There doesn't seem to be any evidence that Bungie leadership had taken any salary cuts or pursued other cost-saving measures in solidarity with laid-off staff. So they just tried to do the standard cost-cutting shit without touching themselves. When a Bungie department head was asked if Parsons or others were taking pay cuts amid the studio's current crisis, they said it's not that type of company. What the fuck does that mean? We're not the type of company that gives a shit about our employees? Cool, good to know. I quit. Anyway. Anyway, so developers at Bungie, when Sony acquired them, were told the acquisition would result in absolutely no layoffs and that nothing major in terms of restructuring would happen as a result of the deal. 2 years later, Parsons has 20 more cars and over a quarter of the company has been laid off. No major restructuring. Anyway, as you might imagine, the devs are pissed about this. On the heels of a successful expansion launch with Destiny 2 the final shape in June, another round of layoffs late last year has prompted former employees and players alike, but the players isn't really that important right now, to criticize Bungie's leadership. The CEO locked his account just as the news hit because he's a coward. So there's a bunch of like Twitter embeds here, but kind of pointing out that he has "Be brave" in his bio and then locked his account after dropping that kind of news. Dropping the news that you've laid off 220 people in a second round of layoffs after launching your most successful DLC to date and then going private immediately is cowardice on an embarrassing level. Coward, you did this, you chose this, I'm already listed as do not work with, and I don't care anymore. You lied to my face, straight to it. You also invited me to come see your new cars 2 days before you laid me off. 2 fucking days. Leave now. There's a lot more of these. Final Shape's staggering success really does the work in proving that it's always been exceedingly awful management to blame through and through. So this is another case of a Tango Gameworks Hi-Fi Rush thing, is that they did their job. They made a successful DLC. The thing that they were asked to do after Lightfall didn't do great. Turned the company around. And they still got laid off. I just want to know what they did, because if I recall correctly, Pete didn't take a salary cut or anything, at least last time. At this point, I don't want to hear this kind of surface level thing anymore. What did they leadership do exactly? This is again talking about their exhaustive efforts. What? List them out. Give me an itemized list of your exhaustive efforts, please. He did eventually unlock his account, but didn't actually say anything. Parsons hasn't said anything about this morning's layoffs. Anyway, great number of former employees, current employees, fans of Bungie, and voices from around the games industry are calling for Parsons to take further accountability and step down. This is Griffin Bennett, a developer with Bungie in 2018 until the end of last year. He was part of those layoffs. Pete is a joke. C-suite taking accountability for any of this, or still just withholding bonuses, and it'll be settled in-house. Poor leadership has crushed one of the greatest developers of all time. Retire, Pete. Again, C-suite, not part of the affecting all levels of layoffs. Nothing happened to them. Bonuses kept back. If I had a nickel for every time I was laid off from a studio I had dreamed to work at, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot. It's weird that happened twice. Ouch, that's the industry right now. Unfortunately. And it's not even the industry right now, it's just greed. It's just MBAs sitting on the top of these companies. Anyway, I didn't even tweet that I got promoted last month, but now I get to tweet that I got laid off, so there's that. Gonna miss my team. I'm affected, I'm so sick and tired of these layoffs. Unionize, unionize, unionize. I'm one of the affected, still processing at the moment. I'm supposed to be on paid time off today, so I found out from Twitter and friends. Great, and even get the direct news. I was affected by layoffs today. Can I explain how soul-crushing it is to have poured my life and soul into a game that has kept me on this planet in the first place? But Bungie had other plans for me. I'm looking for opportunities in QA. I have years of experience. I, for one, love the shipping 4 major player-respected features, as the only person keeping track of all the changes with 0 bug escapes is not enough to not get impacted. Yes, do your job very, very well, to a high degree of professionalism, critically well-received, fan well-received content, still get fired. I've been impacted by the layoffs announced this morning. It's been a privilege. Just really bad timing. My maternity leave was supposed to start next Monday. Shit. This is how I found out I'm laid off. Amazing. Just from the tweet. For nearly 5 years delivering a seasonal story from Hunt all the way to Deep and sending home the most well-received expansion in our history in Final Shape, I have been laid off. What a strange long trip it's been. Joke lol, I'm laid off too. Amazing. A lot, and I'm obsessed with work. Everyone knows this. There's nothing I could have done to not be laid off. In fact, I was literally working so much that so many people told me, "You'll be okay, we need you." Well, they're probably going to find out that they do need her. You can find out pretty soon, I'd imagine. This is inexcusable. Industry-leading talent being lost yet again. Accountability falling upon the workers who have pushed the needle to deliver for our community time and time again. Maintain focus on those who've lost their position and income. Offer help when you can. I mean, it is important to maintain focus on those people, but also focus on the people who should be taking this accountability. Anyway, Pen Plantnik, VFX artist at Bungie, went a little bit step further, saying Pete needs to fucking go. This is mismanagement at the highest level. Spending on R&D while Destiny was not doing the best would prove to be a money pit with no return, and my friends suffer because of it. Among the teams being laid off is the player support team, which has essentially disappeared. They shared their own stories about issues going on at Bungie before the layoffs happened. My whole team is gone. Player support team was also good, as well as some of the folks behind the most beloved narrative moments and sounds. Player support team worked harder than anyone else through weekends, holidays, and the pay was atrocious, only to be tossed out. And then there's more to that, but I don't want to click into Twitter. I wrote this a few months ago, assuming I'd be laid off. Eventually, I was not, but I'm posting it anyway. I'm writing this a few days after the Metacritic and other scores for the final shape was released. I know what is coming, so I want to be clear that I write this talking about... Well, we're going to get to it, but the financial situation at Bungie meant that these layoffs were coming before the final shape came out. No way to prevent this, says only industry where this regularly happens, which is a bit of a riff on The Onion headline, anytime there's a mass shooting event. Bungie laying off 220 people and the CEO immediately going private on Twitter, all while having "be brave" in his bio, is really fucking rich. You know who has to be brave now? Those 220 people and their families. Hot take, but I think if you mismanage your company so badly you have to let 220 people go, then maybe you should be one of them. I'm not sure that's a hot take, to be honest. Jesus Christ. If an executive team has to lay off 350 people in a year, perhaps you, not them, are the problem. See, here's the thing. Either Pete Parsons' work as CEO is valuable enough to warrant his paycheck, in which case he has catastrophically failed at his job with this and should be laid off, or it isn't valuable enough to warrant his paycheck and he should not be employed. Yes. Either way, he should not have his job right now. This is a yearly fiasco at this point. All their devs were making the Bungie tweets again, proud of their efforts, rightfully so, and Pete Parsons welcomed their efforts with a bath of boiling water. Real life Mr. Krabs. Leadership needs to be changed. Their decisions have consistently led to disaster for everyone who has actually been making the games we play. They've been reckless with the studio, its employees, and its franchises. The problem is clear. Bad leadership needs to change. And so on and so forth. So what was going on? Why the layoffs? Why wasn't it able to be turned around? What the exhaustive efforts? All of that shit. So there is an article over on Bloomberg. It is paywalled though, so kind of an issue. Sorry, not Bloomberg. It's over on a Substack, but that Substack is paid, so I can't read it. Anyway, it's been summarized here a little bit in this Eurogamer article instead. So, 220 employees lost their jobs. New report has claimed the cuts were a result of Bungie leadership overstating the studio's financial prospects to Sony. So they lied about the cash flow to their daddy, to their new daddy. The studio said to have repeatedly missed its financial targets and was losing money since the release of Destiny 2's expansion Lightfall. So we did know about that. That was the reason given for the layoffs at the end of last year. There was a clause in the acquisition of Bungie that Bungie could maintain independence as long as they kept meeting their financial targets. They've repeatedly missed those financial targets, so Sony has now stepped in. There's a claim now that the job cuts that happened now, there's 220 people that could not be avoided even if Destiny 2's expansion The Final Shape had a blockbuster performance, which it didn't. It was well received, but apparently didn't actually sell that well. It would need to make deep cuts to show Sony's executives that it was taking its finances seriously, with the studio's autonomy and management jobs seemingly on the line if it failed to meet its targets, which it has not met its targets, but it also didn't seem to make those deep cuts because C-Suite kept enough money to be able to bid in fucking classic car auctions. Anyway, despite all of this, the layoffs, the kind of soul-crushing morale issues and so on, Herman Hulst coming in after Jim Ryan and kind of being, we aim to drive improvements of profitability, so they're going to be coming in heavy with like cost cutting and what have you. Employees have little animosity towards Sony for the cuts because they place the blame squarely on Bungie's management for promising unrealistic growth. And as you reflected in staff media posts that we just went through, they're just, all of it is just directed at management and in particular the CEO. Final Shape expansion did end up selling less than Lightfall, and remember Lightfall was also given for the reason why the company was in bad state at the first place. The issue with live service things and live service expansions and stuff like that is, at this point, Destiny isn't really getting new players. Not many, anyway. And a lot of that has to do with you having to pay to just catch up. You have to buy a lot of those expansions. Only a handful of them are free at this point. And even then, it's usually part of a subscription service. They're free through PlayStation Plus or through Game Pass. Well, probably not Game Pass now, but through PlayStation Plus kind of thing. And then Destiny has this sunsetting, vaulting issue in that they don't have all of the content available at once. So if you're jumping into Destiny 2 new, now, never played it before, making a new account, you can jump in. You're not jumping in at the beginning of the story. You're jumping in like close to the end of a story. Which is like, who the fuck wants to do that? That's a big issue for them. And because of that, they're losing. They're really only just losing players at this point. So even if that DLC expansion sold really well, it's still going to be selling less than previous ones because they're losing players. Like, even if everybody bought it, you're still going to be selling less. Destiny is an incredibly expensive game to make, and they're just not getting the same return. So it's almost like live service games maybe aren't the way to go with these kind of things. Certainly not the way Bungie does it anyway, with paid expansions, but then also vaulting, sunsetting a lot of things. Don't understand how they're not able to keep everything going at once. It's effectively an MMO, and how many MMOs are able to keep things going all at once? They even instance everything, I don't get it. Their backend must be just really bad. Anyway, I'm sure there'll be more to talk about the Bungie stuff that only came out late in the week. So we'll probably hear a little bit more about it next week. Anyway, the bad news continues though. GameSpot shuts down Game Informer, the longest running gaming magazine in the US. So, Game Informer is now officially dead. GameStop killed it. It began publishing back in 1991. So if you were not around for video games, the video game industry in the before times, before the internet, before you were able to just get the news almost immediately as it came out, magazines were the way you did it. Particularly where I am, Ireland, internet was even slower to come out here. So the monthly magazine was kind of the thing. It was the only way you could ever keep up with the industry news. So Game Informer was really important for that kind of thing. For the US, didn't make its way out here until a little bit later. But we had equivalents to the same thing. And obviously, online publications and what have you kind of ate into their subscription service and that kind of thing. But it was still considered a pretty important magazine. It had the equivalent, like Rolling Stone for music or Time for just general news kind of thing. It had that kind of prestige, I suppose, to it until it was bought by GameStop. Anyway, in a meeting on Friday, everybody at Game Informer was effectively told that you're done. Publication was closing immediately. They were all laid off and would begin receiving severance terms. At least one staffer was in the middle of a work trip when the team was told. So that's cool. I hope they're paying for him to get back, or them to get back. So issue number 367, which has the Dragon Age on the cover, will be the very last issue of Game Informer. The website has also been taken offline, just completely. The Game Informer Twitter account posted the following statement. However, nobody on the team wrote it. Reached out to everybody on the Game Informer team, and they all said, I don't know, none of us wrote it. It also has a big whiff of AI to it, so I'm just not going to bother with it. Anyway, frustrating turn of events. Every URL for the Game Informer website now redirects to the official statement, so that means you can't get to their articles, reviews, exposés, that kind of thing. There was a lot of really good investigative work done by Game Informer as well. A lot of those articles not available. Can't get to them anymore. That's a huge amount of video game history news just gone. I mean, you can still get to it with the Wayback Machine. And there are efforts to archive the magazines and make them browsable, but there's going to be copyright issues, trademark issues, and that kind of thing coming down the line. So right now, at least, they're not accessible. Anyway, Game Informer was purchased by GameStop in and around 2000. And in the days before online gaming, they're kind of pointing it out here that Game Informer was the main way many players experienced the world of games. Think back to things like E3 or what would be like Summer Games Fest now, or Gamescom, or Tokyo Game Show, or anything like that, you can't watch live streams because live streams aren't a thing yet. You know, the internet's not a thing yet. You're waiting for the magazine. You're waiting for the writers in that to do their write-ups, give their reviews, give their previews, impressions, that kind of thing. Developer deep dives. Even knowing the names of developers came from magazines. You know, who's working on what. Things that are happening. Like this industry bullshit thing that I do every week. No, I wouldn't be able to do that. It'd have to be every month. Anyway. Despite the meme stock explosion of GameStop and their billions in the bank, GameStop has continued cutting jobs across its business, including nearly annual rounds of layoffs at Game Informer. So they've been very... they've been cutting jobs at Game Informer for a long time, and now they've just cut all of them, effectively. GameStop finally let the publication start selling directly to subscribers again a couple of months ago, and this was seen as maybe they're allowing Game Informer to be a little bit more independent now, but instead, no. Just being shut down instead. Not being spun off and just let them do their own thing, or sold to somebody else, let them do their own thing. No, we're just going to shut you down instead. Cool. Anyway. So at the same time, GameStop CEO Ryan Cohen is in the middle of just shitposting his way through a bunch of things. But in an email to staff last year, he called for extreme frugality and criticized money wasters who didn't contribute to the company or its success, which is a very MBA brain thing to have. However, he's currently being sued by the former company behind Bed Bath & Beyond for insider trading. How about that? How about that money wasting? How about that frugality? A bit more C-suite hypocrisy on your Sunday. Anyway, moving on. Paradox Interactive delays Prison Architect 2 indefinitely, so ordinarily this would be in the update section. But I've put it into the industry bullshit section because Paradox. So Paradox Interactive have once again delayed another game. And once again, it's indefinite. So they've already done this with Life by You, which was meant to be their Sims competitor, their Sims clone. City Skylines 2 console version has also been delayed indefinitely. And now Prison Architect 2 is being delayed indefinitely. What the fuck's going on, Paradox? You know you guys make games, right? And you have to actually release them to make money. You understand that, right? I don't know. I think they're trying to be. I think they're trying to be bought. I think that's what they're going for. Trying to reduce their costs. Anyway, Prison Architect 2 has been indefinitely delayed. The initial release date was September. Now, we don't know when it's coming out. Allegedly, the game needed improvements in its performance and content. This was the exact same excuse given for Life by You and City Skylines. Our continuous internal reviews and beta test groups have highlighted areas that we need to focus on more, which we need to address before launch to ensure players get a good experience in the game. It was meant to come out September 2nd, clarified that it can't commit to a new release date until it can reassess the scope of the work needed to be done. Then over the next few months, so it's not going to be this year. Not going to be this year, at least. Minimum. Might not come out at all if we're still doing the Life by You stuff. Anyway, originally it was meant to come out in March, then it was delayed into April, and then it was delayed out of April again, then into May. In May, this is kind of the big shitstorm, really. In May, the game's original developer 011 left the project after being unable to reach a commercial agreement with Paradox. So Paradox are playing some fucking... You want to think it's 4D chess, but I don't know. I don't know what's going on with them. It sure seems like they're floundering or looking to cut costs so that they can sell the company. That's my impression right now. Anyway. Moving on. Apple Arcade devs call company out of touch, cite Vision Pro and payment issues. So this is a continuation of a story from earlier in the year, where a bunch of developers called out Apple Arcade for basically not knowing what to do with video games. And being really shit at supporting the developers who are exclusive to Apple Arcade and that kind of thing. And basically, it's still happening, and it's worse than it used to be. Earlier this year, Apple Arcade developers aired their grievances with the tech giant, and since then the relationship has become further strained. Some things that they have cited: can take up to 6 months to get paid, and they can go weeks without communication from Apple or anybody on their supporting team. One source has alleged that meetings often have half of Apple's team missing, and the people who are there have no idea what's going on, can't answer our questions. Either they don't have knowledge or can't speak because of confidentiality reasons. Why'd you bother having the meeting in the first place? Like, what are the people doing? The actual decision makers. This is your job. Apple Arcade stuff. It's your Department of Apple Arcade or whatever the fuck it is. Head of Apple Arcade. Why aren't you at these meetings? Anyway. More concerns raised around the Apple Vision Pro and trying to get games working on them. A developer claimed that Apple's engineering support team didn't know how the headset worked, making game development for it even more difficult. So this is like how to deploy code onto the Apple Vision Pro. How to, what is its update refresh rate? What is its tick rate? All of these kind of things. Kind of like super important things for development. They don't know. Super helpful, guys. Thanks. You are the you guys are the ones who are meant to know. How am I supposed to know? It's not in the documentation. Another described the process as going back in time 10 years. Despite the advertised power and cost, it's not a machine built for games. Getting any complex game working on the platform is very difficult. That's kind of my impression of Apple Vision Pro, is that it doesn't have a super high refresh rate. Like, it's good enough for like the kind of things it shows off doing, like watching video in mixed reality kind of stuff. But to play a game where you're fully immersed, like VR style things, it's not really good enough for it. Additionally to that, the Apple Arcade thing on the store has a discoverability problem. Pretty much every store has a discoverability problem, but this one is particularly bad. Older titles are allegedly phased out of search results, so the idea is that the Apple Arcade isn't doing any curated listing of the games. They're not putting like, oh, this game is really popular, I'll put that one at the top kind of thing. It's basically, how new is your game? That one goes at the top. Basically, there's no effort done. It's just sorted by release date, effectively. That's not ideal, really. That's not good. The developer described their game as being in a morgue for the last 2 years. Despite their title being an arcade exclusive, they claim it doesn't matter what we put in the game, Apple won't feature it. It's like we don't exist. It's because the game is too old, essentially. Too old. It's like a year old, but whatever. Like last time, the arcade studios feel that Apple still misunderstands the game industry, which I would agree. We do everything we can to please them for little in return in the hope that they grace us with another project and a chance for them to screw us over again. So, Apple Arcade hasn't been doing great. Really. And it looks like it's continuing to do not great. Alright, so if you're wondering why there hasn't been an Olympics game, Mario and Sonic at Paris 2024, it's because the IOC didn't want to make one. They wanted NFTs instead. Olympics ditched Mario and Sonic series to explore NFTs and esports. So there's no new Mario and Sonic tie-in for the Summer Games for the first time in almost 2 decades. And the reason for that rests with the IOC entirely. They chose not to renew its licensing deal with Nintendo and Sega and allowed it to lapse in 2020 for the Tokyo Games. They wanted to look at other partners and NFTs and esports. This is coming from Lee Cocker, who worked on the entire series, Mario and Sonic games. Basically, the IOC wanted to bring it back to themselves internally and look at other partners so they would get more money. Well, not get more money, it's more like retain more money. Also, FIFA did the same thing with EA, the FIFA games. That's why it's EA Football Club now and not FIFA. FIFA wanted to have stronger ownership of the license, and they basically just wanted all of the money instead of having to split it with EA. And obviously making a video game, a decent video game out of it costs a lot of money as well. So they wanted to get all of it. As I said before, they don't just want some money, they want all of it. And that's why there's no FIFA game, basically. It's all online esport shit instead. There is a Paris 2024 game. It's a mobile thing, and it's full of NFT shit as well, which I'll talk to in a little bit. Anyway, over the past 20 years, there have been 6 Mario and Sonic Olympics games: London 2012, Rio 2016, Tokyo 2020, and then they did the Winter Games, Vancouver 2010, Sochi 2014, and then there's the original, just Mario and Sonic at the Olympics 2007. There is an Olympics game for Paris. It's called Olympics Go Paris 2024. It's a free-to-play smartphone piece of shit. There is a PC version of it too if you want, but it has the mobile controls on it. So I'm not sure if it even works properly. I can play in like different events, what have you. Unfortunately, there's some NFT shit in there as well. Join the excitement of the Olympic Games with NOA's officially licensed commemorative Paris NFT digital pin collection. Yay! Kill me. Anyway, later on this year, there'll be the inaugural Esports Olympics. Sorry, next year. Hosted by Saudi Arabia. Cool. You know, it's probably a good thing Nintendo and Sega got out of that. Alright, anyway. Alright, we're going to finish up with some, like, community things. So this is video game community reacting to the death of Game Informer. It's obviously a lot of nostalgia from older gamers about that kind of thing. So former staff member Jason Ostreicher. Game Informer was incredibly important to me, both as a fan and an employee. Its closing is terribly upsetting, and my heart goes out to those who worked till the wheels came off. Kyle Hiller, GA's content director. Game Informer has been closed down by GameStop, and the entire incredibly talented staff have all been laid off. Frustrating turn of events, especially considering we were 70% of our way through the next issue. Imran Khan, former senior editor at the magazine. This is the worst fucking timeline. Fuck GameStop. The industry is worse off without Game Informer, and that stupid piece of shit company that's been flying by its pants off meme stocks couldn't stand to see a part of it be successful without their direct intervention. Former features editor, Matt Helgeson. It's really hard to put into words how sad I am. This place was more than a job. I really grew up there from a college kid, went all around the world, met so many amazing people, and worked with the best colleagues anyone could ever ask for. Can't believe it's all gone. Former GI editor-in-chief, Andrew Reiner. Heartbroken and angry. Most of my adult life was spent at Game Informer. All day I've been remembering amazing moments I had with the team, some of the most talented and kind-hearted people I've ever met and was lucky enough to work with. Staff member Alex Van Eycken. My wife and I just made it through our 4 months of her unemployment, and I was looking forward to stopping my 70-hour work weeks and have been winding down my freelance projects, only to then lose this job. Good shit. Anyway, from the wider games industry, Timur Hussein is developer on something. It's a big game as well, but I can't think of it right now. This is heartbreaking. All the best to the crew. You did great work. The folks past and present should be proud. Game Informer was an institution. Stephen Totolo, formerly of Kotaku. Really unfortunate. A lot of terrific talent made their way through the GI ranks over the years. We need more games reporting these days, not less. Ethan Gach, currently Kotaku. Game Informer news is devastating. It was a window into a wider world and culture around games, showed other people cared about them as much as I did, and GameStop insisted on killing that legacy and laying off the staff instead of doing literally anything else with it. Susie Hunter, or the Sphere Hunter, I think. She's a community manager for something? I'm not sure now. I'll never forget reading their coverage on Resident Evil 4 and being blown away. It's an unfortunate day. It almost feels like the games industry of old is evaporating, because it is. Jeff. Don't care about Jeff. Anyway, there's a lot more of these. Don't think people fully understand how miserable a world without games journalists would be for game developers themselves. It's wild to see this giant black hole building in front of our eyes. Yeah, it's not great. Feels bad. Feels bad, man. Anyway, as I said, there is an archival project in the works, currently being put together on the Discord and MinMax. We'll see what comes of that in the next few months. Hopefully, be able to get some of those articles back. Anyway, some other things. Palworld developer says playing the same game all the time is not healthy for players or the industry. So I left this in community things because it is mostly directed at the players rather than the industry itself. Anyway, so this is from John Buckley, or Bucky, who is the community manager for Palworld. And this is mostly just echoing something he said earlier in the year, which is pretty much along the same lines, which was, if you're done with the game, move on to a new game. It's fine. Even good. This is how you're meant to play games. And spoilers, it was indeed how you're supposed to play. It's how we were doing it before any of these live service things happened. Anyway, this is more of a refutation for people saying that Palworld is a dead game. Buckley arguing that the game was never designed to be played forever, and that doing so serves no purpose to players. I don't think you need to be pushing yourself to play the same game all the time. It's not healthy for us, it's not healthy for developers, it's not healthy for gamers, it's not healthy for gaming media. And it's just not healthy for our industry, because the more we push this kind of narrative, the more very large companies are going to say, gamers want more live services, and we sure as shit don't. And we're just going to get more of these soulless live service games to come out and then shut down within 9 to 12 months, because they're not making enough money. And we all lose in that case. Play all the indies you can, spend as much money on indies as you can, really support the guys who are trying to make fun games. Who cares if there's only 5 people playing it? Just enjoy yourself, enjoy games. I don't think it needs to be any more complex than it really fucking doesn't. I would echo his call to play more indie things. That's where the industry is actually interesting, as usual. Anyway, we're gonna leave. Thank goodness you're here to loop in the background. Anyway, that's your games industry news for the 28th, or 29th rather, to the 4th of August 2024. There's some things coming out of the THQ Showcase, but a lot of it is a wait and see. We don't really know when, and a lot of those games are coming out. Promise Mascot Agency from the Paradise Killer devs still looks really interesting. Quite excited to play that. It's a little bit disappointing that Avowed has been delayed, but I mean, it'll come out eventually. It hasn't been delayed indefinitely. Looking at you, Paradox. The monthly games this week, or this month rather, for PlayStation Plus. I mean, I have all of them, I think, except for the Five Nights at Freddy's. Okay, because I have no interest in that series. But I already have the other two, so there's obviously nothing new for me. The Lego games are a fun thing. You know, if you played Lego games before, there's nothing new there. But it's more of it, and if you're a Star Wars fan, there's a lot there as well. And Ender Lilies is a good side-scrolling action game. Definitely give it a good look. Industry news, stuff around Bungie is obviously very disappointing. Like, I don't play Destiny anymore, haven't for a very long time, but just the way that the developers have been treated is just disgusting. And again, it's more C-suite getting away with it. You know, the people who are actually responsible for all of these problems, it's another company being hit by this kind of thing. And it's like one of the people who are responding there is just saying unionize. It's like it's the only remedy. Collective bargaining. Make it very difficult to fire you. Well, not to fire you necessarily, but to just be randomly laid off for no reasons because he didn't want to take a pay cut. It's kind of disgusting because he'll just move on to another studio. Or get a golden parachute, which is also be way too much money that he'll waste on classic cars. The Game Informer news again is another part of this cost-cutting shit. You know, it's another NBA toxic sludge brain. Just want number go up, and they see Game Informer as more of a cost than anything else. They didn't grow up in the games industry. They don't see how important it is to keep it going. They just don't get it, and because they don't get it, they'll just damage things. This is really bad. It's really bad. It's less journalism. And as we know, since IGN bought Gamer Network, a lot of it is now being consolidated into one company, which is just Ziff Davis. So we've basically got a lot of the bigger games outlets all under one company, and then you have a bunch of paywalled, journalist-owned ones, but they are still paywalled. And obviously they have to be kind of paywall. That's how else are they going to make any money? The issue with paywalling, though, is that just the news just doesn't get out to enough people. But I don't really know what the alternative is, because the other alternative is ads, and we don't really want any more ads because it invites in NBA guys. So, don't really know what the answer to that is. Anyway, moving on. Paradox. I don't know what's going on. They're a games company that don't make games. Apparently, because they don't release them. They make the games, they just don't release the games. What are you guys doing? I don't know. Make a decision. Community things, again, mostly around the Game Informer ending. And then the Pal World community managers echoing what a lot of people would say, which is stop playing the same game over and over again. Get sweaty about something else. You don't need to make video games your second job. They really want you to, because you're going to keep spending money at them, but it's bad for the industry. It's bad for the medium. It's bad for any kind of artistic, creative expression, because it's just going to consolidate them all into just forever games that don't get any better. Because they don't need to. They already have you. You're playing it every day, even though they don't change anything. Anyway, play new things. Play different things. Expand your horizons, and so on. Anyway, that's it for the news. What is happening on the channel next week? That is the wrong button. That's the button I wanted to press. Okay, here again. I keep pressing the wrong fucking thing. Here's our Wallow games. No change. No new games have been added, and none of the games that I have behind locks here anyway have come out yet. Hollow Body doesn't have a release date. Locomotive is out pretty soon, I think. Bloodlines 2 is out at the end of the year. On Your Tail is out in September at some point. Replaced, I think, has been delayed to 2025, so I have to check that out. And The Rise of the Golden Idol is November at some point. So the rest of them, we're making our way through it. So we're still playing through Final Fantasy 5, Resi 5, System Shock. And yeah, I suppose technically Monster Hunter, because I keep leaving it there. But I'll get a new video out for that soon, at some point. Who knows? Anyway, off stream, I have been playing Kunitsugami, Path of the Goddess, one of the latest releases from Capcom. I still maintain that it is kind of an arcadey game, and it's kind of got a design mentality that is like 10 years late, almost. I still like it. It's really good. I actually am very much enjoying Kunitsugami. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of a tower defense thing. So this mountain has been corrupted by something. I won't get into it, story reasons. And you are playing this like protector of a shrine maiden who is trying to rid the corruption from the mountain. So you're protecting her along this kind of path of the goddess. And at the same time rescuing kind of villagers who were living on the mountain that got taken over by the corruption. And then enlisting them to be part of your assault team. So it's got a bit of a tower defense thing going on in that you have to protect the tower, which is the goddess, or the shrine maiden. And then any villagers you rescue, you can assign them different roles. You can make them like a hatchet-wielding guy. You can make an archer, spear guy, healer, these kind of things. And then you're dealing with waves of these enemies coming out to attack you. So during the day, you are rescuing people, assigning them roles, placing them around the village area, and then at nighttime, you have to fight all of these guys. And gradually make your way over to the Torii Gate. You're trying to get the tower. You're trying to get the Shrine Maiden from point A to point B. Takes a while, because she has to purify the path all the way along it. So it takes a while for her to get there. At nighttime, she stops. You fight all the enemies. During the day, she walks a little bit closer to the Torii Gate. And then eventually, she reaches the Torii Gate. That's the end of the level. That's kind of the deal with it. The levels get more and more difficult as you go on. They present new enemies. You also get new roles, that kind of thing. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. But it does have like a sensibility. It feels like a PS3 game or PS2 game even in some respects. When you are not in combat or trying to purge corruption and that kind of thing, there is a bit of a base management element to it as well. So once you have purified an area, you can then set about rebuilding the village, and that gives you rewards, gives you new trinkets and things, new abilities, that kind of thing. And then 100%ing the village gets you like one cool item, whatever it is. You do stronger attacks, or you can move faster, or the villagers are quicker, or like that kind of thing. Yeah, I think I'm about halfway through it. I will do a Foley Plays Games a bit of it at some point. I might do it as an off-stream thing. As a pre-recorded video and just put it up on YouTube. I haven't decided yet. Because I am kind of thinking to transition the Foley Plays Games a bit series off streaming and into just pre-recorded things. Because I can get through them faster. And as you've probably noticed, I haven't been streaming all that much lately. And a lot of that is energy issues and motivation issues and depression in general. That's what it does to you. It makes you not want to do anything. So when I do have the energy to do it, it's usually like 2 a.m. And I'm not going to start streaming at 2 a.m. So I might just record a couple of minutes of something, and then I can put all those minutes together and make a video out of it. Anyway, that's what I've been doing off stream. Anyway, speaking of streams, I am struggling to get back into streaming, admittedly, but I'm trying. Anyway, this is the plan. This is the schedule for next week. So Resi 5, I'm putting at the beginning of the week because that seems to be when I have all my motivation, and we haven't played it in ages. So Resi 5, Tuesday and Friday. System Shock, Wednesday. Final Fantasy 5, Thursday and Saturday. I'm feeling we'll finish Final Fantasy 5 on Saturday. And that's why I've put it on Saturday, so I have enough time. You know, I don't have work in the morning. So we can stream a little bit later if I need to for that. And then the weekly news recap Sunday is the one you're watching right now. And thank you for watching, because that is it from me. Thank you for keeping me company. If you're watching on YouTube, you can check the description for links to all of those articles we talked about today, videos we talked about today, as well as a link to the Discord if you want to drop by, hang out, suggestions for new games to play, just discussions about what happened in the news, that kind of thing. Or if you have any news things, or just want to talk in general, drop into the Discord. If you're watching on Twitch, the Discord link is under my face, or just type in !Discord. You'll get the link there as well. Right, I'm gonna head off. Have a good rest of your day, and hopefully I will see, well, you will see me play Resident Evil 5 on Tuesday. Bye-bye.